Keep your hands and head inside the vehicle at all times. Buckle your seatbelts, check your mirrors, sit on back and relax. It's lights out and away we go for the Tall and Short of It podcast. All right, everyone. This is another episode. Oh, fuck. I don't want to do that. That start sucks. You got to thank the people for listening. All right. Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in for another episode of the Tall and Short of It podcast. I'm your host, Justin.
And I'm Aaron. Welcome back, everyone. We've got a really exciting episode today because you know why? F1 is back, baby. All about it. We've also got some League of Legends that we're bringing to you and some Magic the Gathering, of course. Can't leave anything out, but F1 is back. Super pumped. Justin, how are you feeling this week for the episode and for your week in general?
I'm feeling pretty good overall. We have a lot to talk about. We had 3 days of testing. I played like 6 games of Magic. We've got playoffs coming up here in the final stretch of the spring split. So yeah, a lot of exciting stuff. I'm feeling pretty good. Hopefully you're feeling pretty good.
Yeah,
how are
absolutely.
you?
I'm doing good. It's been a pretty solid week overall. So I can jump right into my Rose, Thorn, and Seed. So
Let's do it.
End of last week for my Rose. I had a really fun little date night with Colleen. We went out, we got some dinner, and then went and we're going to see The Batman, the new movie. So I'm a big Batman fan and a little bit of a dork with it. So she suffered her way through a Batman movie for me, which was really, really cool. But right by the theater we were at, we also there was a like arcade place that like Dave and Buster's type deal with like all the different games and fun stuff. So got to play some games and all before the movie was starting while we had some time to kill. So that was just a really, really nice date night and way to start the weekend and all. So that is my Rose for this past week. For my Thorn, I continue to hurt myself by playing basketball. So I somehow jammed up my toe either by like dragging it weird while playing defense and it like kind of getting twisted or like stubbing it inside my shoe. So I don't know exactly how it happened. I just realized it after the adrenaline stopped flowing and when I took a break to the bench and so that's been like for most of the day a little bit sore, but I iced it. It'll be fine, but I just cannot stay away from hurting myself. It's just I am perpetually injured. So
Well, I think overall that's like part of the what you sign up for. You know what I mean?
yeah, I think that's like we had talked about a few weeks back when I was mentioning how I talked to my coworker and she's like, well, like you are doing things that are out there more prone to injure yourself and I guess body's not getting any younger, so
No,
this
definitely
is
not.
this is something I guess I have to get used to or kind of find ways to avoid a little bit better, but in general not the worst injury that I could have had, so I'm not too devastated by it, but it's definitely annoying to wake up and just have all these like aches and pains as a late 20-year-old man.
Well, give your local massage therapist a call and they could probably help you out. So you're saying a stubbed toe is your thorn this week?
Just that and like I've had some other just like aches and pains. I've had some like weird kinks in my neck and back that I've been trying to work out. I was using my foam roller and like a tennis ball to try and kind of get in there and get after it. But I've been thinking a lot lately. I do want to get to a massage therapist and get like probably a deep tissue type massage. Like,
There you go.
I don't really need the relaxation type massage right now. I feel like my body could use something a little bit more intensive to dig into some of those knots and sore muscles and all. So I'm planning
That sounds like a plan.
yeah, I'm gonna have to do that. Hopefully in the next couple of weeks, I can get that scheduled and all. So.
Nice.
So that is something, but yeah, just like aches and pains, that's it's a thorn. Like I hate waking up and feeling just like not 100%. Like I'm already a tired person in the mornings, so waking up and also feeling kind of stiff and sore is just not helping. But
Yeah, that's the double tap, man. Sorry to hear that.
I appreciate it, but it's not the worst thorn in the world, like I said.
Sure.
So that means my week's been going pretty well.
I would agree.
And then my seed is just we have a lot of F1 coming up, and I'm very excited about it. We have a number of race companions that you and I have already kind of scheduled out and all, so keep an eye out for those. We are looking forward to putting out a lot of that content and maybe some additional stuff with qualifying heats for races that we are not able to do the race companions for. So very excited to be back into that. It feels like this is like the start of my year. It's not
Yeah, for sure.
it's not January 1st. It's the start of F1. It kind of kicks that off. So that's my seed. I'm just looking very much forward to the upcoming season. So
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. That's a pretty good seed there, my friend.
yeah. But how about yourself? What do you got for the people this week?
Well, I guess we'll talk a little bit about it later, but I guess the first thing before I do my rose, thorn, and seed, I think the first thing that we should say is if you are not already either a fan or curious about it, want to find a way in, Drive to Survive on Netflix is a great little, I would say, succinct little view into Formula One. It chops it up really nice, makes it really exciting, gives you a good look into the characters, the cars, the tracks, the stakes, and all of it.
Yeah.
So Drive to Survive is really fun. I just say that to kind of piggyback off what Aaron was saying about the seasons coming up, and obviously, season 4 it will be about the 2021 season, but it'll just fucking get your mouth wet for some good clean racing. Although
And
spoiler alert, but yeah, Drive to Survive is really fun. Definitely agreed. Looking forward to the series. Go ahead.
well, I was gonna say with season 4, I honestly think that they have kind of nailed the layout for the format of how to make the series as well. I think in previous seasons there was a lot of like weird mixing together of the order of races and like going forward and skipping backward and like all over the place. I felt like this season in the show they did a really good job of like keeping things as close to chronological as they could in terms of time wise, while still covering all the different teams and all the additional stuff that they have previously. So this past seasons, especially if you've been tuning into the podcast or heard from any of your friends, family, I don't know, acquaintances about the craziness that was at the F1 end of the F1 season last year. They do a really nice job of kind of laying that out and going through that story. So I definitely would recommend it.
Nice. So yeah, that's just a great way to get into Formula One, see what it's all about, see what we're talking about. Because we do appreciate you listening, but we know that some of this may be going over your heads and whatever, and we would just love to have you in on the jokes. But yeah, let me get into my rose thorn seed. I'll just nail it through here real quick. It's a bunch of boring stuff. So my rose is just really warm weather. I've been able to stroll out there in a t-shirt with my sunshades on, and it has been a beautiful experience. Throwing the windows open, just getting that nice breeze in my underpants is
That's
just
not
super,
boring,
super
man.
quality.
That's
Well, I mean,
that's a good
it's
one.
all right.
No, this weather, it like makes me excited to just do things again. So I'm with you. Like, just
Nice.
the fact that it's not like brutal to be outside just makes me like feel like there's so many things out there in the world that I want to do. I don't know
Yeah,
if
and
you get that feeling
in
too.
No, definitely. And I think it's fun that, like, over the course of the Formula One season, they, like, chase the sunshine, basically. You know, they want the tracks to be as warm as possible. So, yeah, it's just, it means good things are coming. So, yeah, the warm weather is my rose. I'll do my seed, and then I have a little story for my thorn that I'll throw at you really quick.
All right.
My seed, I finally finished organizing all of the what would you say, all of the digital music that I had. I started very slowly, just, going, get all the A's done, get all the B's done, get all the C's done. Because as I've told you before, I had a bunch of different versions of the same collection, songs here and there and everywhere. I finally got it all done. Got the the extra libraries erased and deleted off the recycling bin. I defragged both of my hard drives that like all that data
Nice.
was on. I have it all just in one place. So that was like a massive weight off. I could just feel like my brain space just get bigger because it was not a worry anymore. Definite peace of mind there. So now the seed is I just get to tinker. I get to go grab some album art that I don't have. I get to, type in, erase this, type in the real name, get the album artist, put the album art on, and I just get to do all that stuff. So I'm looking forward to that. So that's my seed. And then for my thorn, and this is just a little view through the mailbox here. So I'm looking for one thing. It's not in my mailbox, but what do I find? But just a bunch of garbage. Just coupons for stores that I don't even think are open anymore, like with people's names that I don't recognize. And so I thought, this has got to stop. Who is sending me these? So I called the UPS, and the funny thing about it is there's like a bunch of automated messages before it put me onto the phone with a person. And
Oh,
it was
bro,
like,
it's a
yeah,
nightmare.
dude, it was so funny though. It's like, are you sure you want to talk to a person? Because like most of this stuff can be handled. It's like whatever you have going on.
Well, in
a
every
robot can
message,
handle
it's
it.
like a 30-second long like thing. It's like, well, if you're calling for stamps, then you can go to the post office and actually just walk inside, and there's a kiosk, and you can use the kiosk, and you can use money, or you can use cash, or you can use a debit card, or you could even use a check. We don't give a fuck. Just buy our stamps. Oh wait, you don't want stamps? Here, let me list the next thing. Like,
And get off the phone is like their main goal. Just to not eat up somebody's time. And I pushed through all of it. I finally got somebody on the phone, and I was like, hey, I'm just curious. Is there any way that these coupons can stop? And this lady was like, oh, no, sir. Those are part of the service. You get those. You can't stop those. They are inevitable as death. And I literally repeated back to the lady. I said, these coupons that I don't use are part of the service, as in like complimentary, as in like I should be happy about getting them. And she was like, oh yes sir, those coupons are part of the service. I was like, all right, great, thank you. So I was like, all right, there's no way to stop these things, but the way they describe it is like, oh, it's a feature, not a bug. Like, you assholes. So I just like, whatever, just drop it, tell her to have a nice day. But I was happy I called, and just now I know. Now I know there's no there's no secret code I can punch in that'll make it stop. This lady was like, sir, they are coming as the day is long. Like there's no stopping it. It literally made me feel like, in Harry Potter where the messages like get into the house no matter what.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like. Like we're dropping them off. So yeah, I had a nice call with the UPS lady. And yeah, they're not stopping. So I'm gonna just start clipping coupons. That's gonna be my new hobby.
I think that
Um,
there has to be like there has to be a service out there on the internet, and you probably would like it's probably not worth paying for someone, but there has to be something out there where you can get yourself removed off of these like lists because since I've moved around a number of times and I moved to Virginia, I moved back to Pennsylvania, and I've been kind of all over. I don't get that much junk mail at this place, at this apartment, because I have like made sure not to provide my mailing address on like anything that I've signed up, like anything that I've signed up for online or things like that. I to like as much as possible avoid giving my mailing address out. And so I think I get maybe 4 or 5 pieces of junk mail a week at this point, which I'd say is like pretty low in from what I've seen. So I don't know if that's like part of it, but I feel like there has to be a service out there somewhere that's like it's like The Office when Michael Scott starts his own paper company, and the big like client that he's trying to like fight for and nail down is the company that makes all the junk mail that gets sent out to everyone.
oh,
It's
dude,
like
that's so
he
funny. So he'd be part of the problem.
so well because he's like he starts his own paper company when he leaves Dunder Mifflin briefly, and he's like I've got to get this big client because they use a ridiculous amount of paper sending junk mail to everyone on the Eastern Seaboard. Like it's just that's so funny though that she's just like, oh no, it's not stopping. Don't kid yourself.
Yeah, she was like, "You'd be better just fucking enjoy it, sir." It's like, all right, dude. But yeah, so
I
that's my big thorn. But yeah, there's a lot from testing.
yeah.
How much sleep did you lose? Staying up into the wee hours of the morning to watch? Did you catch all of the action?
I did not catch very much live, I will admit, but I did go back through each day and look at like the times, look at the different lengths of runs and things like that to see kind of the differences and maybe like, oh yeah, maybe like this team had a faster time, but they only did 40 some laps while this other team was running really long stints and doing like 120 laps this day and this and that. So I did definitely keep up with it. Unfortunately, did not see very much live though. So
Well, to be fair, I think a lot of the good. Well, watching it just cars going around a track, hearing the commentators, like there is certain value to that, but I think a lot of it is better when you can go check out the highlights, just see the like the car packages and get up close with that kind of stuff. See like after it all has gone down, go back and check it out because there's a lot of good resources to see all that kind of stuff. So I don't blame you for not watching it live. But yeah, there's an insane amount that has come out of the test. I think some very surprising things, some exciting things, some not so exciting things. Where would you like to start?
let's start with your not so exciting things. Let's start with the bad and move towards the good.
Okay, yeah. So the worst thing was that Daniel Ricciardo. Well, I don't know if this was the worst thing. This just comes to mind. But Daniel Ricciardo didn't get to run a whole lot. He was ill and could not make a lot of the testing.
Yeah.
And I think that really hurt McLaren's program.
Yeah.
Obviously, Lando Norris got a lot of time in the car. But yeah, that was big, unfortunate for McLaren.
Yeah, definitely. So Danny Ricciardo, he had ended up having COVID. So it was definitely an unfortunate thing for the team because like having one driver out there for both sessions every day is a lot, especially when you're trying to get some of those long stints in and seeing how the car does on long runs and with high fuel and all of that. Like you're putting Lando out again and again and again, and that's like has its positives and negatives. It's like definitely a positive because in some ways, because Lando gets a lot of time in the car and can give a lot of good feedback. The negatives, of course, are that's exhausting. Like he's out there doing multiple race lengths, kind of on a back to back to back days, which is a lot. And also, I think it's a loss for McLaren in terms of Danny not being in the car because he has shown himself to be a huge beneficial component of the team in terms of how does the car feel, how's the balance, what feedback can you give, and obviously multiple drivers are going to give different feedback based on like their driving style, the way that things feel to them, things they felt previously in an F1 car. So not having that secondary like aspect or secondary like voice definitely is a detriment, but on the bright side of that, Danny has had multiple negative COVID tests. He's starting to feel much better from what I saw today from a McLaren update. So he will be back in the car and available for on the paddock Thursday to be able to start getting ready for the Bahrain GP.
Nice. That's super exciting. And well, I should say I think there's no press on Thursday. So I don't think we'll get an update until, maybe like I don't know if they'll do not drivers, the coaches press conference or what, but hopefully we'll know, sooner rather than later if he'll be racing or if he'll be
They said for their announcement, they tweeted out an update from the team on Daniel Ricciardo. McLaren F1 team confirms that after testing positive for COVID-19 last week, Daniel has now returned a number of negative tests and will therefore return to the paddock on Thursday, ready to compete in this weekend's Bahrain GP. Daniel has been feeling better each day as he continued to recover while in isolation following local regulations in Bahrain.
So very cool. Okay,
so
yeah,
should
I
be
what you said.
Yeah, so he should be back on the track and able to race per McLaren's tweets unless there's anything that shakes up for this weekend. So that's definitely a good thing.
Nice. Yeah, and hopefully Lando was able to get some good rest in and some good recovery as well. Because it's going to be, I think it's going to be a hot race, and it's going to be, I would say a bit of a battle for a lot of the drivers. Some of those cars look pretty tough to drive, so hopefully, hopefully Lando isn't too winded. But that's kind of the story from McLaren.
Yeah. So I guess getting into some of the other teams. One of the big surprises for us, I think, for testing was, of course, we had Haas with the shakeup on drivers lineup right before testing, Mazepin out and Magnussen in, but they were that was stunning performance that they put out in testing, and really showed that, which I'm very excited about, that the time that they put in on prepping this car, going through, using the wind tunnel with their aero from their last place finish and everything, like all of these components came together, and they are now putting out a car that is going to be competitive, and I think will be competitive in the midfield, at least in the early season. We'll see as things progress. Teams start to figure things out, make upgrades, change their packages and everything for the car, how things shift around. But I think initially Haas is going to be very competitive out there on the track. And I think having Magnussen come back into that car was a huge plus for them in terms of just experience to be able to go through testing and all. I think the feedback that they get from him is probably a bit better than from someone just off their rookie season from Mazepin. Just like from a pure experiential level. I think that is a big plus for them, and that was pretty shocking to see them at the top of the table for a couple of the different sessions of testing this past week.
And it was Mick. It was Mick Schumacher that was doing pretty well. I think on one of the days he hit fifth on the timetable. And obviously, like those times, people are running all different variations of things. They're not like really telling. But there is a point where they start doing the quali sims and like really, really getting down to brass tacks. And he was putting that car in the same position that some of the Ferraris and some of the Mercedes were doing. So I'm seeing Mick having made significant strides in his own game, and then also the Haas vehicle looks really good. I think they're going to be, as you were saying, pretty competitive for the midfield.
Yeah, and I think that's like a huge step because you see the amounts of, I mean, from watching Drive to Survive, you always forget like the difference in kind of constructor positions, like because I always think of it as like once you're outside the top five, it's like, oh, everyone's just trying to improve. The only difference is really the amount of time in the wind tunnel that you get for testing and things like that. But there's tens of millions of dollars in terms of like money and stuff that's different based on like finishing higher. So if Haas is able to get some early season points, and be pretty competitive throughout the year, that could be tens of millions of dollars difference from this past season of funding that they would have just by moving up a couple spots on the grid in terms of the Constructors' Championship, which is just really, really significant, especially for a team like Haas that does try to stay at kind of a minimalistic budget as much as possible. So
Well, and the other thing that we have to remember coming in for this season is that the cost cap has been introduced, so now they're in level playing field with some of the other big spenders.
To some extent, because like the big spenders have to like limit it, but that still like the low spending teams still might not even reach that cap potentially. Sure. So they still might be coming in under budget, but so yeah, those will definitely help. But that is a good point to bring up, that that salary cap, or not salary cap, the what is it called specific, like
budget cap
being implemented this year. So
yeah. And if anything, yeah, I see your point. The least it could do is just bring the field a little closer together, right?
Yeah,
because you're right. The top teams are still able to spend that max amount. But as you were saying, if Haas is able to maybe take some, get in the points and get some like true results, then yeah, maybe they'll have some more money coming in and continue to work the improvements. Because the big storyline, like from Haas, and why this is such a big deal is in the 2021 season, you'll remember they pretty much took off the whole season of development. They literally just raced their two rookies in the same car that they started with and just said, hey, 2022 is going to be our year. And it seems like it has really come to fruition, and it seems like the work that they put in over the 2021 season, while I think people like may not have believed them in a way where it's like, okay, yeah, like we'll see maybe. But I think coming out of this test, they really put their rubber to the road and said, hey, this is what we came up with, and I think their solutions worked.
Yeah, I think they have a good take on the different rule and like the different changes that were made for this upcoming season with all the rules and regulations. I think that they're very in line with everyone. I don't think that they have fallen behind in any areas, and that's a great thing for them. Like that's kind of the a good piece of motivation to start the season off. So I'm really excited to see how they do. But what other teams, other than Haas, of course, stood out to you? What are some of the things that like you picked up from testing that you're looking forward, especially going into this first week of the season in Bahrain?
The Ferraris.
Yes, I had a feeling. What about them?
Not only do the cars look really quick, both Charles and Carlos like look really quick as well. They continue. I'm at a loss for words. They continue to impress, and they look just really solid. And what was interesting about the Ferraris, and this is more of like a technical standpoint, they came in with their side pods. Their solution was very different than a lot of the other teams. They had this like spoon design where they also incorporated these like basically like gills, like similar to gills of a fish. And through a lot of the weekend, they were working on covering up a bunch of those gills with like thinner elements, wider elements, having half of them covered up, having the front half covered up. But a lot of the development that you saw from Ferrari was coming out of those side pods, and obviously there are gajillion dollars worth of tech on these cars, but those side pods were a really interesting solution, and I think it gave a lot of power to the Ferrari here on testing. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I think the other thing I think is it's interesting to see. I feel as though a number of other teams kind of picked that up from them because when their car was initially like shown and everything in their like livery release and everything. I don't remember actually if they had those gills and all, but a number of other teams have also taken that same kind of concept on, and that has performed pretty solidly. The Aston Martins were looking pretty good throughout the testing weekend in terms of time. They were towards the top, definitely improving from where they were at last year, at least for what you can see. And they do have, I think theirs actually might be a longer set of those gills along the side pods there than the Ferrari. But in general, it was like, for me, it was not just the Ferraris like speed and everything. It was also the longevity that they had. They had some really, really like long runs in terms of just like getting a lot of time on track. They were doing 100 and 110, 120 laps per day essentially, and we're out there just putting the time in, and their car didn't have any issues in those long runs.
Yeah.
So not only is it fast, but it also has the consistency, the longevity, and kind of that expectation for it to be able to perform well in like more of a race environment. Because I think this first week, a lot of that like ability for the car to just last and be out there and everything, I think that we're going to see a lot of that come into play over the first few weeks of the season. Seeing whether teams have to start taking early engine changes or different things like that, because there's so many new regulations, and how these engines are going to hold up after all of these changes and all is a big question mark. So them being able to put in that many laps as they did, about 320, 330, I think, over the weekend, is a huge plus for them in terms of data and kind of just really pushing the car to see, hey, does it break after use? So,
And yeah, the Ferrari showed some really solid reliability over the course of the weekend. One of the other interesting like solutions that you'll see from the teams, and this is different up and down the paddock, is as not just the different side pod elements, but there are different solutions for the like the bouncing up and down, where they're trying to get this nice balance between getting the ground effect downforce, but also not lose like stability in the straights. And so what you'll see is different suspensions, where you'll see like push rod or pull rod for the front wheel suspension. You're seeing rods like tying down the back end near the what used to be the diffusers. And so there are so many different things going into these cars, and this is what I was getting to. It's that reliability that the Ferraris had, where they can just do lap after lap after lap. All right, come in, put this new thing on, get more of the visibility chalk on there. All right, send it back out. They didn't have to have they didn't have any like engine problem downtimes. They weren't like burning through brakes or anything. So yeah, I think a lot of good stuff from the Ferraris. And so much of the day 1 and 2 stuff was the aerodynamics and the trying to fix the stability and the straight issues with the ground effect downforce. There was so much going on, and I think Ferrari just had it locked down throughout the whole weekend.
Yeah, and I think with that, a big thing that we're probably going to hear about a lot in terms of radio messages, different content that's going to be out there as the first week of the season starts. I feel like we're going to be hearing from the drivers a ton about, oh, the balance is off, or oh, I'm losing the back end, or those are the kinds of things that you can kind of expect to hear from the drivers, that's describing what Justin's talking about with like the not having the porpoising effect, or maybe those teams are having the porpoising effect of like the balance being off, or the weight distribution, and all with the new aero packages. So I think that is going to be a huge thing to keep an eye on, and will be a telling sign of teams that are maybe lagging a little bit initially in the season, to try and figure out that the solution to that kind of problem.
Yeah, and hopefully, I mean, it's going to change track to track, and I think that's a lot of what these tests are for, is just running through a bunch of different scenarios with different aero packages, and just seeing how the car reacts. I think some portion of the test would have been data gathering for Bahrain, specifically, like for the Bahrain Grand Prix specifically. But yeah, you have to believe that a bunch of the different packages that they would have thrown on would be like, oh well, let's look at this may be whatever it could be. I don't even want to begin to dream about what those programs are like. But what I'm getting at is just the amount of runs that these teams needed to do, and like who else was at the top of the table? I know Max and Sergio were running really well. I know
Pierre was up there in the AlphaTauri. He had some nice runs. Yuki was up there on day 3. He was up in P6 in terms of lap time, and he put in 57 laps. And then I think a lot of it is just going to be kind of difficult to tell, honestly, until until the race. Because because like day 1, Albon in the Williams was up P5, but then day 3, Albon and Latifi were 14th and 15th. Like, I think there's a lot that's going to be kind of tougher to tell, but I think that 2 other just like notes, of course, we would be remiss to not mention Red Bull and Mercedes. But for Red Bull, the aero package that they have put together going into the end of testing and then into the first race, I think looks really, really good. And I think that aero package is going to make them very competitive, at least at the start of the season. Of course, throughout the season, everyone will be getting upgrades, making changes to their package that they're bringing week after week. But I think Red Bull has kind of nailed down a really solid setup and all for their car initially this season. And I think Mercedes is kind of a question mark. I feel like they may be. I think they are a little bit behind where they were last year, but I think it's less than they lead on in the interviews and the different things. I won't be fooled. Mercedes every year at testing loves to be the guy that's like, oh, I just don't think that we're there. I think we're just behind. I think we're behind the eight ball. We really have to push to catch up. And I think from the years of seeing them do that now, and them have those kind of interviews and then come out blazing fast at the start of the season, I think that's a tough thing to full-heartedly believe. I think that they're better than they lead on. I think they're worse than they were in the previous year. So
Sure. Yeah, I think that's the measured approach when considering Mercedes media, of course. They although they have a driver lineup that isn't as on paper spectacular as Valtteri and Lewis was. But what I will say, and this is like engineering technical critique that I don't know if I'm right about, but their side pod and aerodynamic package may not be may not be the right move because compared to a bunch of the other teams, their solution is very different, and also like they weren't getting the times either. So I don't
yeah,
know if that's a spot where they're going to be able to develop, if they're going to be able to change it, but that seemed like a big portion of it because they were dealing with a lot of stability issues, and I don't know.
I think it seems like a big issue with like their balance of the car because and this is obviously I have minimal knowledge of the tech and all the engineering that goes into it, but Mercedes obviously has avoided going with those big side pod diffuser type things on the car like we've seen on a number of other cars. um, I think that reduces, of course, like the weight of the car, especially in the center. So with the other cars, you have more of that side pod, more of that chassis that is and body that's in the center of the car for those the different aerodynamics of it, and so that balances the car to the center more because you just have purely more mass towards the middle. I think when
Sure.
you have a smaller, more sleek car like the Mercedes is, the balance is more even across the car, which is not necessarily a good thing because then little adjustments and things may throw all of it out of whack. There's less of a center that kind of is the point of stability almost. And like I said, I'm talking out of my ass. Don't take me for the F1 tech talk that they'll be probably putting out talking about the different stuff. But that's kind of the feel that I got as well, that they are struggling to find, like, I think if they can find that perfect spot for their body and their chassis, then that car is going to, in like a blip, just eclipse a number of cars that are going to be ahead of them at the start of the season. Because I expect there to be probably at least Red Bull and Ferrari ahead of them. But if they can nail it, I think that they are going to jump leaps and bounds up the grid from
Sure.
that starting point. So
Sure. At least we could expect that from Lewis. I think George has proven to be obviously a capable driver.
Yeah.
But it remains to be seen what he can do consistently in a Mercedes, and then a Mercedes that is, like you had said, questionable.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll see what they do. There was just so much over the course of the weekend. What fascinated me was the amount of changes that happened
Yeah, it's crazy.
in, what is that, a 20, like a 72-hour period, and then it's teams like spying on other teams and saying like, oh, did we get this wrong, looking at that, and it was really fascinating. I think once it wound down on day 3, that's when it like kind of really got exciting. They had teams stretching their legs a little bit. I know Fernando Alonso got a really good lap in at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So I think the teams were. This is such like a light observation, but I think the teams were having fun, and overall, it seemed like the upcoming season is going to be a pretty good one, because the consensus in the air was like, man, it's all to play for. I think it could be anybody's game.
Yeah, and I really do think that it could be. I think that there are, of course, teams that I do expect to be a little further down the grid, but I think some of the ones that were lower down these past seasons have potential to jump up and move around a little bit. But before we get into the first race of the season and just like a little brief intro to that, I do want to talk a little bit about the Drive to Survive in this past season and some of my kind of observations from watching the show and the different points that they kind of made throughout.
Yeah.
I know you're only a couple episodes through, but one point that I want to initially start off with that was very disappointing to me. There is no Alfa Romeo throughout the season. I got no Kimi content for his last season of F1. I am bummed. That's a big L for me from the Drive to Survive series. Not even worth watching.
Well, that was like probably the driver's choice.
Oh no, I 100% know it was Kimi's choice to not be part of it. But I was still a little bummed nonetheless. But I don't know if you've gotten to this point yet in the season, but I was the Haas stuff that won't be really into play this year was kind of weird with Mazepin, especially his dad. There was a point in the series that, and this is like why I appreciate the series, because you do get to see certain behind the scenes things that like wouldn't even end up on like behind the scenes F1 stuff on the official F1 like YouTube or whatever. But Dimitri, I think that's his name, Nikita's father, Mr. Mazepin, was talking very like early on in the season about pulling the funding from Haas if they did not switch the chassis around between Mick and Nikita. So I think that, I guess Haas had like one chassis that was performing better than the other, and so like Mazepin's dad was like, yeah, put my son in that one or I'm pulling my funding, which was fucking, that shit is so weird to me that teams can just like do that, because this is the same thing that happened in previous seasons. Like when I first started watching F1, when Racing Point was Force India, like there was all sorts of weirdness with the ownership and everything, with different sponsorship money. Like I have trouble understanding how the contracts work that a sponsor is not committed to the amount that they said that they would give to a team for an entire season. I don't understand how people can pull money like that. And that is like, I think, a big, big problem if it would continue on in F1 consistently, because situations like that where, for one, a lot of people felt like Mazepin got into F1 because his dad sponsored the Haas car, which I think is at least partially like true with that. But the fact that his dad can like dictate things inside the team just by saying, if you don't do this, my money's gone, is fucking crazy to me. It does not make sense in my brain. So that was a weird point that kind of like stood out to me. What do you think about that? Because I don't know if you got there in the series as of yet.
Well, I haven't gotten there yet, but I do have a couple thoughts. I mean, it makes sense to me. Like, there's a world where the fine is way less than the like committed money, so they'll just like eat the fine for whatever they agreed to and just pull their money. I think it's like a big dick swing as well, where if you are able to just eat that fine, pull your money, pull your son, like you kind of leave them like dead in the water for a lot of like in a lot of circumstances. So there's like a control element there. Also, who knows the time frame of when that would happen, where maybe it's just like, oh, at the end of the year, then I'm out, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
However, I don't necessarily think it's cool that these team owners would be like holding principals and engineers and the movers and shakers of the team. I don't think it's cool that they'd be like holding them hostage like that.
Yeah.
Because again, that's a strategic decision that's being made by the wallet. And like, to be fair, what the fuck does he know about a car? I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, well, whatever about making money and this and that, that's fine. It'll, whatever. But if that just seems like bad business, and I imagine Formula One as an organization, as a championship, whatever, they probably don't want to be like in business with the types of title sponsors that would do that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So there's an element of why would they shed a light on it? Maybe they want to show like this is something that goes on, but the teams persevere. They were able to drop that sponsor and blah blah blah. Who knows?
I think it like played more into like early on, like Mick was consistently like beating Mazepin pretty easily and all, and like as the season went on, like Mazepin had a little bit of better performance after that, but he was still getting beat pretty consistently.
Right.
So like it didn't end up affecting it, but like it was such a weird thing to see, because obviously we've seen a ton of Lawrence Stroll in previous seasons of Drive to Survive, and that is the kind of like sponsor big money guy that I think you really want on your team. Like he was all in everything we saw, like, yeah, they made him kind of seem like the big bad Lawrence Stroll and everything, but like he genuinely like was there to see like the team succeed, and of course he wanted his son to succeed as well. But with Mazepin and his father, it was weird because his dad just was like, basically the gist was, I don't give a fuck about the team. I just care about my son doing well. Right. Like, make him good. Like,
right.
So very, very different perspective. So I think that was also maybe a component of the way they filmed it, just because there is that contrast to the previous seasons where you see the other kind of title sponsors and ownership involved. But the main stuff that I like did want to dig into, that was some background that I found pretty interesting to see, was of course the stuff that was primarily involving the end of the season Saudi Arabian Grand Prix and the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. And so just like being able to go back to it and see it from with some additional perspectives and all. So for something I didn't realize for the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, second to last race, Max was actually like not like 100% like in terms of physical that race weekend. He was talking about some lightheadedness, some dizziness, some different things like that throughout the weekend, and that was the one where he was ahead for the final lap of quali and then binned it into the last corner. So like even after that, like you see Horner and Jos Verstappen talking about like, oh, like maybe the lights over the track at night for the race and everything might be affecting him. Like talking about going with a darker visor so it's not like messing with his like causing him headaches and nausea and like those kinds of things, which was something that like it shed some like additional light into that weekend, which I thought was interesting and also like kind of impressive seeing Max like push through all that and like still have a very solid performance. Yeah. But then it was also interesting seeing some side-by-side comparisons and things. And I will like preface this, of course, with I am a Red Bull fan. I try to be as unbiased as I can. Seeing throughout this offseason the amount of ridiculous biasness on both sides, though, it has been like really, really frustrating because I think that a lot of things, and it was put into better perspective for me seeing it back-to-back episodes on the show of these two weekends. The FIA was like fucked up a lot, and it wasn't just the end of the season. I mean, you see essentially the same exact thing happen in the Saudi Grand Prix as you see in Abu Dhabi in terms of someone being pushed off track and all, and it just polar opposite like decisions made by the FIA. At Saudi Arabia with the restart and all, you see or I guess after the first restart you see Max go off the track, get ahead of Lewis by just like a tiny margin and all, like a car length or so, and then he ends up being forced to on the next restart give back the position and also give up the position to Ocon and start third. So that's what you see in Saudi Arabia. In Abu Dhabi, you see a very similar situation, early chicane on the track. Max has the inside line, Lewis goes wide and just runs off and just bolts forward and takes the lead or maintains the lead of the race. And this is something that I didn't know from all of the content I watched. So Michael Massey over the radio to the team, instead of, oh, Lewis needs to give up the position, his decision in that instance, or the stewards or whoever makes that call, goes, give up the gap. So, okay, Lewis, just like ease back a little, let Max catch behind you and then take off again. Like they
said that on the broadcast.
I didn't remember hearing that, and that is just an absurd thing to do. If you're saying that, like, and when Horner got on the radio with Massey, Massey's like, oh, we feel he gave up the advantage. And it's like, I thought the whole point of if you go off track and gain an advantage, you give the place back. That's always been everything I've heard. Every time something like that, oh, you passed off track, give the place back. Oh, you gained a lasting advantage, give the place back. Oh, you gained a lasting advantage, that lap doesn't count. Whatever the case, it was always that doesn't count, give it back. And in that instance, it was, Oh, just like ease back on the gas for a split second, Lewis. Like you're good. So just in terms of like the differences, because like seeing that and seeing that kind of, I think, biased in one direction decision, and then seeing kind of the opposite in terms of what we saw with the safety car in the end being more biased towards Red Bull, of course. I think things like kind of even out throughout the year. It sucks, like, and still looking back at it, I hate that like any of that came into play in the final race. I would have loved to see like a tight, hard fought race, and even Will Buxton says it in his little like he only gets another weird point from the series. He only gets these weird little short clips where you see him like all serious, just being like, and I guess we'll see what's going to happen in the next race. And it's like, well, it was, he's such an analytical person and like a face of F1. It was weird seeing him just have these little quips. But he says before it, like in their shooting and filming before Abu Dhabi, he's like, both of these drivers like deserve to win the title. One's going to be like elated and one's going to be devastated, was like the gist of what he said. Right. And so obviously, like after a hard fought season, I understand why people are upset. I think people on the other side would have been extremely upset if Max had lost because of different things. They would have been pointing out every instance that they felt unfairly treated and all. But seeing those side to side, it was just bizarre, like seeing this was the decision made here, this was the decision made being there. They're opposite decisions on like for the same essential like problem.
Right.
So that was just pretty tough and handled poorly. And so in that sense, like looking back, obviously I feel like Michael Massey got scapegoated a little bit, which I'm sure he did to an extent. But I also think that he is in charge of a season that had a lot of really not well made or at least well explained decisions in terms of penalties, why certain things were penalized and other things weren't. I think there's a lot of things that hopefully will be done better. And that was like at the end, like I enjoyed all of watching Drive to Survive, all getting insight on all the different teams. I loved seeing a nice thing was seeing how competitive each of these teams is, even at the bottom. Like seeing how just like I feel like you don't get much insight into how like the competitive nature is of the teams that are at the bottom of the grid. But when you see George and you see the Williams team, and like George is literally like crying, tears welling up, choking up in his voice when he's talking about them getting their first points, or previous to that, like the frustration that you could see coming out of him when he was like finished P11 behind Fernando Alonso and like missed out on points by like just that slimmest margin. Like you kind of like get lulled into this sense, I feel like, through just the natural, like the nature of F1 and the bottom teams kind of consistently performing not as well, that you kind of lose a perspective on like how much like push and drive and like just emotion these guys towards the bottom of the grid have. I think that's something that I kind of lose, because you see all the talk about the guys on the top of the grid and like, oh yeah, we're pushing, oh yeah, we got to get these points, we're in a tight fight for the constructors, or we're in a tight fight for third, or we're like all this stuff, and you see those guys, and then you don't get that as much from the teams further down. So that was a nice side of what you get to see in the Drive to Survive series, which I really kind of appreciated as like a antithesis to the main plot line of the season of the Max and Lewis like battle.
Yeah, and I imagine there's a bunch of reasons for that, but I think the beauty of the Drive to Survive is that it's another studio's handling of the thing, so they can show the storylines that they want. Like part of the reason I'm sure we don't get to see the Williams or the Alfa Romeos or whatever during the main broadcast is because like they're not like winning races. They're not gonna sell tickets to the further things. But Netflix is in a position where they can recap the whole thing evenly and honestly and whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, of course we're just going to see more of Max and Lewis than anybody else because they're that's who was fighting. But hopefully that and part of the whole getting into the new season and yada yada is that we'll see again, hopefully, maybe some of the back of the grid shift around a little bit, so we do see more of the other drivers at the top or near the top, or in a position that they weren't previously.
Definitely. And so to lead into the season, we have the Bahrain GP coming up. We did have the FIA make a decision in regards to some rulings from the end of the last season. So rule change to the unlapping of cars that was announced today, I believe, or yesterday, like late night. Essentially, they determined that the previous rule said any safety cars can unlap themselves under like safety, or any cars can unlap themselves under safety car. They changed it to all like lapped cars can unlap themselves during safety car. So the situation where the FIA allowed only the cars between Max and Lewis to unlap themselves at the end of the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix should not happen anymore, hopefully. So at least there's some resolution to something like that going into the season, for like any future kind of similar scenarios. But we do have the race coming up this weekend in Bahrain. We have FP1 and FP2 on Friday, FP3 and qualifying on Saturday, and then we have the race 11 a.m. on Sunday. Tell me your expectations or thoughts kind of leading into this first race. What are you kind of expecting for the different teams or just in general?
Well, I think the short of it would be I'm predicting a very different podium than we've seen like previously. I'm gonna guess Max P1, Lando P2, Charles P3, and then like a bunch of other stuff going on back there. But I just think we're gonna see a really good race. I think we're gonna see an exciting race. There's I think a lot to play for here, but yeah, overall, I think I'm looking for just a little bit of fresh air, a cool drink of water, you could say, that isn't, Max and Lewis at the front or, who knows? But
some
I think,
shakeups. Yeah.
Yeah. But I do think just based on performance, I think it's going to be, Red Bull, Ferrari, and McLaren / AlphaTauri like up at the top.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I'm looking forward to some shakeups. The things I'm most excited to just see how they work out, I think, are the biggest shakeups that happen in terms of teams. I'm excited to see how Valtteri competes newly as an Alfa Romeo driver. Is he going to be able to put that kind of consistent, solid performance that he had as Mercedes number 2 driver for many years? Is he going to be able to bring some of that skill that he had? Because he is a very talented driver. Seeing him in that midfield car, I want to see how he does. I'm excited to see Alex Albon back in the Williams car, back in F1.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
Guan Yu Zhou, I guess it's I will have to correct myself probably a number of times, but they've been going. It's Zhou Guan Yu, I guess. They do the last name first, so seeing him as well as the rookie on the grid. Seeing Yuki's improvement is going to be exciting. And then, of course, George in the Mercedes. I think that's going to be really interesting to see because I don't expect him to take a similar kind of position on the team as Valtteri did, who was like somewhat resigned at certain points to being like the number 2 guy. When he was not like neck and neck with Lewis in the drivers championship. And so I think that George is not going to have that same kind of perspective on things. I think he's going to be looking to just constantly beat as far up on the grid as he can, whether it's beating Lewis or like, I think he's going to, I feel like we're going to see some similar scenarios potentially as we did a couple years back between Leclerc and Seb Vettel on Ferrari, where you have the young driver who's really trying to prove himself on a big team, like trying to perform, and at the end of the day, it's about his performance and not necessarily the team's. So I think that that young gung-ho, I have to prove myself attitude, and I think George has it, especially after 3 years on a really, really poor performing team, to jump into one of the best teams on the grid. I think that's going to be kind of the attitude that he has, and I think it might have some clashing moments with Mercedes and Lewis. So
Yeah, until I disagreed right up until you said that. I was going to say I don't think that's the position that Mercedes is going to have him in. But yeah, you sewed it up very nicely by saying that they may have some clashes. Because yeah, they are playing for Lewis's eighth, 100%, and I don't think they want
I think
George
that,
getting in the way of that. I think
yeah,
they'll obviously use him as a tool and a weapon, and he's there for a reason, and blah 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 blah. But if it comes down to it, it is reverse the positions, please. Reverse the positions.
well, that's what I mean. I think that the team, yes, like their perspective on George for while Lewis is there is probably, yep, that's our second seat. But
Yeah, big time.
for George, I can't imagine him taking that
Sure. Well, he
very
has
lightly.
to. Yeah,
So,
you have to have that mentality, or he wouldn't be there. You know what I
right,
mean?
exactly.
But yeah, let's just see how they all do
But
coming
yeah,
up this weekend.
lots of shakeups. So check it out. Look forward to our recap next week. I am very much looking forward to it. It's going to be a fun weekend.
Agreed.
But moving forward a little bit, we've got some different League of Legends to go through and all. One thing that I did want to briefly mention was that there's been a lot of backlash regarding solo queue in Korea. So Faker actually came out and he was streaming and made some different comments about solo queue. He was in the process of being inted by one of the Chinese, I believe it's top esports, one of their players. I think it's King Tian. Their
Okay.
top laner was like 0-16 or something like that, just running it down.
Oh yeah.
And so there was some frustration from Faker about the solo queue quality in Korea. And basically, he said, if I was not a professional player, I would not be playing solo queue. And so I think that it kind of maybe hopefully has brought to light just some of the issues that you see in terms of like the handling of different behavior in solo queue and all. I think that's been a long-standing issue for a number of regions. Is like, how do you get quality practice time and all in just like the normal environment, not scrims, just like standard practice when Korea is saying open mid at 10 minutes because their bot laner's 0-2, or you have people like hoping the most horrible illnesses on your family when you're playing League in EU West, or when in North America you just have shit solo queue because like people don't care and you don't have a good player base that's the quality of some of the other major regions. Like, I think hopefully some of that, especially Faker, like the GOAT of League of Legends, bringing that up and being frustrated, maybe will shine a little better light on it for some changes to maybe be made. I don't know what they are. I don't know. I don't know the answer. I think if someone did, then it would have happened by now. But maybe they'll try and figure something out that will kind of improve the quality, and we can see some even better League of Legends.
Well, they had also introduced, and I don't know if this is the same server that Faker's playing on, but I know they introduced the super server that was a like really high elo server that both the Korean region and the Chinese region could play on. Is this the server that he's playing on?
I don't think so. I think it's just
Okay.
standard Korean solo queue where
Okay.
like Chinese players can still like get
Connect. Okay. Yeah,
accounts
yeah, yeah.
because they
All
get
right.
the Riot accounts or whatever.
So it's not necessarily about like what region the player running it down is from. I
No, it
think
was
my
just
main
wild
concern
that
is
it was
like
like a professional player from a major region was just like fucking running it down. I'm like,
my
that's
argument though is it that wild? Like I can totally understand that mentality where if played if played out perfectly, an 0-3 lead should be game over, right? And especially if you're not in comms, nobody's typing, the jungler comes like nowhere near your lane, and you just keep on dying. I can totally understand from a pro's perspective where he is in scrims, then he's got to wake up for the gym, he's got team meetings, he's got to do media, then he has his best of three on this day, and then the next day. I can understand him saying like, fuck, I just need to practice Renekton. Can we FF, please? I can totally understand that mentality. But when you're mixing those pro players with people that are just like coming home from work and they're like the same skill level, they're just not paid to play. And I know Faker and TN are both paid to play, but what I'm getting at is like I think it's a bit uh it leaves a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth where Faker's saying like, "Oh, this is a bad solo queue environment." It's like, my man, I know you've said run it down. I know you've said FF at 10. Like it's not that they're trying to make your life worse or whatever. They're literally just trying to get better practice in too. And what they're trying to do is say like they're just trying to shuffle up and go next, right? Like, yeah, 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 you won. That's fine. Can we just play another one? Like I think that is more of that mentality, and I totally get that. I am totally about like going having there be a way to give respect to the opponent that is just beaten you. And the shitty thing is that there's 9 other players or 8 other players in the server that have to deal with it. But to a certain degree, like unless you're all not going to man up and say like, okay, this is what we're here for. We got to get in the comms and blah blah blah.
yeah.
Then what are we really doing here? Like you're just kind of complaining, or
Yeah,
you're not actually playing at the level that you should be to overcome that kind of thing. My point is like I think going to solo queue looking for practice may not be the thing to do for the best player in the world. Like, of course, that environment is not gonna. It's not gonna make your dick hard, Faker. I'm sorry. Like, there is no game in solo queue that's gonna like make him come.
Well,
And it sucks that TN's running it down, but dude, get over it.
And I get that side of it, but I also like think in my kind of on the just devil's advocate side. If Tien is losing lane and wants to know how it is to play from behind and wants to just like try and like play Renekton from ahead, from behind, from even, like whatever the fuck he was playing, like play 1v1s. Like the team environments in China, like, so I do put some of that on the player. Yeah, I agree in a sense that, like, yeah, going to solo queue and looking for the tip top of the table practice is not going to happen. But at the same time, like, if the goal is to just get a bunch of practice in on a certain champion and in certain matchups or whatever, fucking do 1v1s, like, instead of just saying like, like remake in scrims, like play out situation. I know that's an NA thing. I don't know if they do that in China where they're like, we lost level 1 remake, like let's just like start over. I think that playing out those scenarios or things like that in scrims and standard practice with the team are probably better than just being like, I'm just gonna like run it down so the other team ends this game quicker. Right. And I go 0-16 in a 15-minute game.
Well, and he might have been like just tilted off the face of the earth. His coach might have just like whapped him in the head with a book. Like, who knows, man?
Yeah.
But you're right. Overall, that's like probably not a good thing to do from TN's side.
But I think both sides, like the expectation from Faker of like, I just like solo queue is not the best environment. It's just not going to be. Yeah. So I agree with you on that side of it. It was just it was a bulletin board headline that E-News magazine sitting in the shelf as you're going through the grocery store that just catches your eye while you're waiting there. Kind of headline that I saw.
No, that's a fun place to start. I will say this though, I wonder. This should not be stuck in my head, but I remember, I think it was a Kardashian. They tweeted at one point, they were like, does anybody even open Snapchat anymore? And their stock tanked like 14% or something. Like, that feels like something Faker could do, where Faker's just like, does anybody even solo queue anymore? And Riot's stock just fucking goes like 10-12%. I mean, that's, neither here nor there. That's
not the best Kardashian headline that of recent, but that's still a pretty good one. I think the best one recently was Kim going off and being like, no one fucking wants to work anymore. No one wants to work. Just, if you're a woman in business, just go out and grind and do it. And everyone's responses to her were just brutal. It was like, oh, not all of us can have a best-selling sex tape.
Okay. All right. I gotta point out the insanity with that. Okay. She made a sex tape. And then, like...
Well, also, her dad was the fucking guy who got O.J. Simpson off from allegedly murdering his wife.
Fair enough. But what I'm getting at is, like, the same mentality that she's saying is like, oh, just, like, go out, get it, and, whatever. The reason she's... What am I trying to say? She is doing that. Like,
yeah, it's just kind of...
There's a point where it stopped being about who she
no. I mean, you're right.
Come on, then.
You're right. No, but it was
grinding harder than everybody.
Dude, I don't know about that.
The Kimoji app, like, you gotta go out and network. You gotta talk to people. You gotta sell that idea. And somebody like her is iterating every single day. The show, the apps, the clothes,
Oh yeah,
the colognes.
trust me,
Bro, what
dude.
are you talking about? She's not like
No, like the point that it was more so like the condescending way that she said it to like as if like, oh, women just aren't out there working hard and that's like what is the difference between me and them. And it's like, yeah,
what is
okay.
the difference.
And not completely. There's
Yes,
some
it is.
no, and
All about working hard.
I will say that I do think that they work hard. I, for one, would not want to have my entire life like on videotape and put out there for the public to like. That's fucking exhausting. Like that's not who I am. I'm not someone who could do that.
Sure.
I
And
also
they've obviously signed up for it.
yeah, they signed up for it. They're about it. I also think that they are extremely good at marketing themselves. That is their biggest like positive for like how they've gotten to where they are. They've taken any sort of media and any sort of publicity that they've gotten and been able to turn it and point it towards whatever product, whatever marketing aspect that they've like been pushing for and all. You just also can't ignore the fact that their family started with a shit ton of money and so
Dude.
they were just a leg up on people. Like you can
My dad only gave me $1 million. I am self-made.
like I do and like with tons of celebrities, I think that they all are extremely hardworking because you have to be at least to stay at the top, like because the news cycle is so quick, everything is so just boom 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 on to the next thing. To stay at the top and in the forefront of media and of news and all, like you have to really do things to maintain that focus on yourself and all. Like promoting products, like having a TV show, like all of that stuff. Like I just the way it was said, and to wrap this up, the soundbite was just pretty brutal sounding. How she's just like, oh, women just don't fucking, they just, no one wants to work anymore. Just pick yourself up by your bootstraps, bitch. Like, grab those Louis Vuitton booties and you're good to go. Like, doesn't everyone have 5 pairs? Like,
Right. Well, it is very like let them eat cake kind of thing.
yeah, that was the most. But no, it was. But back to the focus with League of Legends and all. Like, I hope that the publicity maybe will like shift some perspectives, but at the same time, I think, like we said, you shouldn't be looking for like practice environment in solo queue. You shouldn't be a dickhead in solo queue. Both things are true.
Right. Yeah, I would definitely agree.
I don't think Riot's stock is tanking though. They came out with Arcane, dude. They've got that.
True.
They've got that Netflix money now.
That's true.
So, but talking about some of the games that have been played, starting at the bottom. Now we're here, LCS. What were some of the main things? Of course, there was the Cloud9 Liquid matchup this week. But did you have any other games or notes that stood out to you from the LCS?
No, not really. I mean, yeah, a bunch, but we'll be close to 3 hours if we talk about all of it. I think the Cloud9 Team Liquid game is overall just really the only thing to talk about. I think EG and 100 Thieves as well. I think their matches are like worth talking about. But I think the main point is just like I underestimated Cloud9, and they were given a bunch of opportunities where they were able to pull out a W where maybe they shouldn't have, but it's left them with a really good record, and now it's left them with a pretty good read on the meta as well. I'm not 100% sold with all of what they're doing, but yeah, overall, it's enough to beat North American teams.
Well,
The one
and
thing I thought, go ahead.
I was gonna say like their picks and bans were also like I thought they did a pretty nice job.
Oh yeah.
I mean, yeah, like you have to waste a ban on Zillion because you're facing Bjergsen, which like
Hmm.
is annoying as fuck. Which also is credit to Team Liquid. I would love to see international teams wasting bans on a Zillion, like going into international play. That would be beautiful to see as a North American fan. But I thought that like you said, had a really good read on the meta. They got Summit onto the Tryndamere, and Summit has just performed very, very well over the past few weeks, especially. So that was good to see. And Liquid, I think, had like some nice play as well. I think they had some, like you said, opportunities to win that they kind of gave up to Cloud9. But the matchup itself was a solid one to watch.
The thing that I thought was funny was when Cloud9 flubbed the tower dive in the top by getting double stunned by the Jacks. I just loved how the casters, like, for 2 minutes tried to explain, like, why that was, like, could have been next level from Blabber. And it's just like, man, come on.
Nah,
Like,
they got outplayed.
yeah, they got outplayed. That's okay. So, like, yeah, just I don't know what it is, but there's something about it that just feels why are you trying to lie? Just make fun of him and move on.
Yeah,
And
Cloud9 fucked it up. Why
yeah,
is that the narrative? That
and
like
then
yeah.
go ahead.
Oh no, no, I'm saying why is the narrative like, oh, like, but it could have been. No,
Right.
no, Blippo fucked him up.
Right. Sorry about the pod tag right there. Didn't let you speak.
No,
But
all good.
yeah, it was a good game. I think overall they are the teams to watch just for the near future, the far future, just the other records, the other teams, they're not looking that strong.
Yeah.
There is something about the pace of the meta, the 6 minute dragon, the 6.5 minute Rift Herald with the some teams just aren't keeping up. Their pick and bans are really weird. They're like choosing slow champions. I think the the ability to play a bunch of different styles and having the map movements as a squad, and I'm using this to say the bottom lane from Cloud9 and the bottom lane from Team Liquid look really good. Although I do have to say Hansame in that game, I think through it, his positioning in like two of the fights was really fucking questionable to the
Yeah.
degree that like I don't think other players would have been anywhere close to where you were or made the same decisions in the fight, which makes me just like, what the fuck, man? Because like, go ahead, we'll talk about in the BLG game with Uzi on Jinx, like compare positioning. It's like, man, what the fuck?
Well, I think the Zeri is also being on that pick. Like it's. I like granted that doesn't 100% like make up for bad positioning and all, but I think that may have potentially come into play a little bit because you are playing a champion with a pretty different style from like it's a newer champion, and so like figuring out the best way to play it in team fights, you're probably not 100% there. That being said,
Sure.
he definitely like on any other champion like should not have been in that same position as he was. Like he was caught out a bit at multiple points, and just like unable to really do much because of it.
Right.
So definitely some improvements to be had there, but I think they, like you said, they're the two standout teams. I think they're the ones that we'll probably focus the most on here leading into the spring playoffs, and then with seeing who is gonna turn out to MSI. But that's all I've got for the NALCS. Really, that was my primary focus this past week.
Yeah, there's really not a whole lot to to ooze about. But the one thing I do want to say about Hansama and Zeri is like if that is what we can expect from him, like basically playing too far forward, thinking he has more mobility than he does, and just getting caught out, like that is going to be a really big liability for them in pick and ban, because that means they just have to ban it every single time. And you see what these pick and bans look like when you have to ban Zeri. It gives you like it not limited options, but A, you want to be playing it if you can, or B, if you have to ban it, you want to get something back for it on the other side. So it worries me that if we're going to expect this like really reckless play out of Hans Sama, it's probably just a pick that you want to avoid. Stick to the Aphelios, play the Jinx, whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, it wasn't that tight, and I think from an in-game perspective, and then because of that, a pick and ban perspective. Excuse me. I think the pick is a liability for Team Liquid right now.
Yeah, I think it's something to keep an eye on. It's like early with Zeri being out. It's one specific game that he really looked pretty suspect in terms of his play. So hopefully they'll be able to get some more practice in, see it turn around. I would love I know I'm a Cloud9 fan, but I would love to see like an extremely competitive couple of teams at the top of the table. I think that only makes teams better. And so kind of moving towards the LCK, I know my big focus was teams getting better. This time, health-wise primarily. Fredit Bryan was kind of my like focus this week because they were for one of their matchups they were forced to forfeit and give that up, and being sixth in the standings, they were 7-9 at the time, now 7-10, fighting for that spot in the LCK playoffs. That's a brutal position to kind of be in, and I think that my biggest focus was why is there not a way for these teams to play while being quarantined, especially in Korea? Like the extremely low ping that they have across the country in general, the proof of them having different isolated sound boxes and like booths and things like that. Like I just don't understand why this entire team, because one of their academy players got sick and then spread that throughout the team, why this LCK roster is being forced to forfeit when there are solutions there. It's not like, oh, like we have to figure something out. Like there's solutions. They're very blatant and apparent. Like these teams played, like LCS played in isolation for an entire season, for an entire year, where they had Riot employees going to these guys' gaming houses or gaming headquarters or whatever and standing behind them and making sure their computers weren't fucking weird or had anything going on, like for an entire season. You can't do that for this team for two matchups.
Yeah, it seems weird. It seems like there would be, especially after so long, it seems like there would be solutions. I understand like the competitive integrity argument. I understand the like safety argument and this and that. Maybe it's like an optics thing. Maybe the team doesn't want to look a certain way. Like, oh yeah, it's fine, but just keep on playing. Maybe they don't want to like give kind of that vibe. Who knows? But yeah, overall, it it is just a shame for Breon that they had to drop those boards, because yeah, I think they were well in contention and could have pulled something special, but instead they just had to get beat up on by T1.
Yeah, beat up, like, forfeit to Genji. I mean, on the bright side for them, it's two matchups that they most likely would have lost anyway to the top two teams on the table. So on the bright side, the record's probably the same as it would have been in most cases. But it's just, it's also, it was brutal watching the two games against T1 where they're just stomping them in 18 minutes and then 19 minutes the second game, which was, I mean, purely because Breon just was fielding the whatever 5 players we have, like, we're going to fit you into whichever role you can just so we can play, as opposed to forfeiting. Like, that's rough. It's a bad feels.
Yeah, definitely. And it really looked just like bot games. It really looked like just computers playing against T1. So yeah, that was really unfortunate. And I hope moving forward they can find some middle ground, some kind of happy medium where teams are still able to play, but everybody's happy in the sense of like safety checks.
Well, we're living in a world with COVID right now, and who knows? Not myself. I have no idea when or if we'll ever be rid of it. For all we know, this could be like the flu, where you get a flu shot every year. Like, fucking, who knows?
But whatever it is, you don't want it messing up your League of Legends.
Yeah, I don't want it messing up like anything. I think that like every situation needs to come up with backup and alternative solutions. Like, you've seen it in a lot of workplaces, going to work from home and things like that, and different other ways to avoid dangerous situations for people. Like, it's not that hard. We've done it for League of Legends before. We'll do it again. But I would like to see them be a little more proactive and ready to implement those alternative options, instead of just being like, sorry, we can't reschedule the Asia games. No rescheduling this match. Nope, sorry. Genji can't play 3 series in 1 week. Are you kidding me? Like, come on. We used to have super weeks in LCS where every team played like 7-1, like, best of ones. Like, it's doable.
Yeah, it's doable, but I can see them using that as an excuse for sure. But yeah, just big unfortunates for that.
Yeah, so that was my main LCK point. We still, of course, have T1 and Genji at the top of the table. Then followed not too far back by Dragon X and Damwon Gaming Kia, with KT Rolster, Fredit Breon, and the Kwangdong Freaks kind of battling out for that last spot, or those last 2 spots in the LCK playoffs. So
nice. Yeah, and I think a bunch of the other games that were this week didn't have. They were teams that were out of playoff contention or whatever it was. So yeah, not all interesting stuff coming out of LCK, but yeah, we'll have some playoffs here coming up very shortly. Another series I do want to talk to you about over in the LPL was the BLG series versus U Prime, where we saw Uzi play in all 3 games, and I used him as an example earlier, but he is a different animal. And there are players, like, even in that same server, that should be doing the things that he is and just not. Like, I don't understand a mid laner that doesn't just flash the thresh hook when you're going to flash after you got nailed anyway. Like, just play proactively. And it feels like that's how Uzi plays. And it was through that proactivity and I think good positioning that led them to win games 2 and 3 to bring back the series. If I'm remembering correctly, I'm pretty sure they won. And it was just in amazing fashion. Like, they They really came back. There was a Baron steal in game 3 that like really nailed it home. So that was a really fun one to watch. And Uzi on the Jinx, I think, was really strong pick.
Yeah, they had gone down 1-0 against Ultra Prime, and then came back
Yes.
and won game 2 and 3 to wrap up the series. And the other funny thing that I thought was like just kind of funky looking at, because I did not watch this series unfortunately, but looking at the picks and bans, they're almost identical. They're identical for game 1 and 2, with almost the like extremely similar, practically exact same team comps for the first 2 games. And then only slight switches in the game 3 pick and ban. So definitely a good matchup, and seeing Uzi play is always fun. So I'll have to check that out. But I think the fact that he played Jinx in all 3 games, I think obviously she is kind of the number 2 pick to the Zeri if played well right now. I think those are kind of your top 2 AD carries. So I would expect to see a ton of focus on them going forward, specifically the Jinx. For whatever reason, it doesn't seem like the Jinx is considered strong enough to ban out, but at the same time, it seems like it has a really high win rate. So I would definitely expect to see a lot of games of Jinx being played moving forward and all. And to see kind of how that shakes out between the Jinx and the Aphelios and the Zeri, as we're getting into playoffs especially.
Yeah, and another thing that we saw is the Vex from the mid lane. So just thinking about the bottom lane picks that we may see, the like the immobile 80 carries seem to be a fine thing to do if Vex is being picked up. Although, like, there's just so many trade offs that you have to think of when like pick a ban, because you know if you're thinking against a Vex, then you have to worry about things like Ari, where okay, now I don't have the mobility, but there's so many things to think about. But yeah, I think overall the Jinx, the Aphelios, and the Zeri are kind of top tier right now. I know people are still playing the Ezreal a little bit.
It's an
We saw
easy
Kai'Sa
backup
a
to
little
fall
bit.
to. Yeah.
Sure, but yeah, it was just exciting to watch his positioning, the change between the machine gun and the rockets. Like he was just really clean, man.
Nice.
And it was a good series watching them like come back in the series like big time. Like both in game 2 and game 3, it was just really fun. Good quality League of Legends out of the LPL.
Very
And
nice.
they have so many games played over the last couple days. I don't think they're in playoffs yet, but I think they're ramping up to them. We saw V5 versus TT; those were good games. There's just so much going on, man. So
Yeah, I
much.
think that they have, I don't know, like maybe 1 week left before, if not
Gotcha.
or I guess we're now into the last week of the LPL. So
Yep.
um, we've had a number of games, and then we have, I guess, 2 more to 3 more days of games that are going to be coming up before they're wrapping up their regular season. So yeah, tight fight. You've got really really close teams from essentially second through seventh in
Mm,
there. You've got
yeah, it's really tight.
2 10-4 teams, 2 10-5 teams, a 9-5, a 9-6. Like it's going to be a really tight battle for that. With those top 10 slots, I believe, going to their playoffs in the LPL. So, but yeah, fun League of Legends. Lots of playoffs coming up. So we'll get to see kind of how that shakes out, what we're looking at moving towards MSI, and how the teams are kind of looking for international competition, and who is going to end up being that representative for the different regions.
Yeah, because I think they're doing it the way they did last time, where it's just one team from every region going.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, so that'll be fun. But yeah, that's not for a little while yet.
But moving onward and upward, Justin, you
Hmm.
had some Magic the Gathering games. You had six. You said that you got to get in this past week. Were
Yeah,
you
there was a bunch. Go ahead.
playing the same deck the entire time? Did you mix it up at all? What do you got? What did you play?
So I was able to get 2 sessions in. I think I played, I think it was Saturday night or Friday, one of the weekends. I played with Buddha and his friends. Shout out to Milk and Braxit. We did a couple of 3-player games, and I think overall, the one thing I want to say about that is they were much faster to slide into a 3-player game than like Ian, Brett, and Jason ever were. Where we were waiting on Milk for like 3 minutes, and it was just like, all right, well, I guess we're shuffling up then without him, because like I guess they know that like if he doesn't show up, like he's asleep on the chair, don't call him, he's not waking up. So like we just rolled right into some 3-player games. That was really fun.
How is the
Um,
dynamic
Go
different
ahead.
in a three-player game
It's
comparatively?
so much different, I would say, but then there's a world where it may not be different at all. I just think like the the how your like threat assessment is different, and I really think that fourth player like offsets whatever's going on. I think 3-player, the winner is decided like quicker.
Well, I think yeah, the fourth player, because a lot of times from what you've based on what you've said, it sounds like the fourth player, whether it's like whoever it is that fourth person or the lowest on the leaderboard at the time, kind
Mhm.
of has the ability to not necessarily win, but shake things up. That you just have an extra person in there to do that. You have additional removal. You have additional like instant spells and things like that that might affect one person or another.
Mhm.
More than the rest of the table. So yeah, I can imagine that having that is a little bit funky because you're just missing those extra cards being thrown in that are kind of shaking things up a little bit more. You get a little bit more
Right.
diversity or like a little bit more bad way to say it, but chaos with an additional person.
No,
Um,
that's a really good way to say it, because yeah, that was kind of my main point, where it's just like the games are just decided, they just end a little bit quicker, even if like the turn count is still rather the same. It feels like the winning player was in that position for like a decent bit. It just, took a little bit. But in 4-player games, it really does feel like um a little more of an even pace setup. But yeah, either way, I like both 3 and 4-player games. But it was just funny how quickly we were able to slide into them. And I'd played the same deck a bunch. I played Akim, the Soaring Wind. So it's just like a budget build, no fancy cards or anything in it. But basically, the idea is just to make a bunch of tokens on my turn and then off turn, so I can just like make birds and then swing in with those birds. It's just like a basic like creature token strategy.
how do you make tokens off turn?
So there's a bunch of cards in the deck that would say like, return target creature to its owner's hand. If you spent 3 blue mana to cast a spell, make a food token. And because that's an instant speed spell, I cast it on their turn. I make a token that'll still trigger my commander and make a bird. So the
Gotcha.
idea, like the dream, would be to make 4 bird tokens on a turn cycle and then swing in. So I was playing that deck, and it actually worked much better than I thought it would. Those budget builds, I'm always like very wary of. But you know me, I build the deck because I have the cards, but it performed way better than I thought, and it was actually a blast to play.
Nice.
Um, and from those games, what I do want to say, there was a new commander release with Neon Dynasty. His name's Shorakai. He's the Shorakai, the Genesis engine. He's this like big vehicle. He can draw cards. He makes pilots. He does everything, and that's the commander that Buddha Spoon was playing. And yeah, it was really strong. Just a lot of card value. Making the pilots that crew the vehicles in the deck is just super strong. In the games that I played against Shorikai, it won 3 times, and just brutal fashion. The one game he had a turn 1 Soul Ring that was over. The other game he had a Drum Bellower, which like untaps all of his creatures on each turn. So he just had a lot of game actions to take all the time. So yeah, the Shorikai deck, Genesis Engine was pretty cool. Shout out to Buddha Spoon. He fucking housed us. The other note I want to make about that pod, I was able to play Najeela twice, which was exciting. We did some
Nice.
CEDH where I played against the new Jingataxius and a Mizzix deck from Buddha. But yeah, playing the CDH is always fun where it's like on turn 3 we're like, you know, holding up interaction and like talking about like, oh, can he win? Like he just tutored, like what are we doing? And it's just like it's such different magic. But it was really fun playing with Buddha and Brax at that level. And getting to play Najeela is always fun because it's like, oh, it's such a pet deck for me. I love
Oh
it.
yeah, I was gonna say it's
So good.
I feel like
It's so
that's your
much fun.
favorite.
Is.
That's your pocket pick.
That's what I'm here for. Well, whatever. I won't go
Hi,
into the
my
details.
name's Shestock, and my pocket pick is Najeela.
Yes, dude, that should be my Facebook bio. I'm a Najeela main. No. But yeah, and then we were playing some Commander 9. I was playing a Layla. She's a fairy. She makes other fairies with a bunch of enchantments.
Nice.
I went 0-3.
Beautiful.
Ian won. Yeah, it was sick. Ian won one of the games that just blew my mind. Like Jason was so scared of Ian's deck that he literally let that fear win for Ian. He made the most abysmal choices throughout the game. It was brutal. And like the whole like, oh, Ian's gonna win. Oh, I'm worried about Ian, blah blah blah. And then Ian wins. It's like, dude.
Well, and that probably almost reiterates how he felt too, where he's like, I told you Ian was gonna win the whole time. It's like, bro,
Exactly.
you helped him.
Yeah, like big time, and like it's really rough because to a certain degree, like y'all just like we're just having fun.
Oh yeah.
There's a levity in the air, but
Some
to a certain
banter
degree,
though.
yeah, I just want to be like, bro, there are much better in-game decisions that you can be making here.
Yeah.
But whatever, that's not my place. You know, whatever he can lose however he would like to lose. It's just so tough when like you need that player's help to win and they're just not doing the thing. It's like,
Yeah.
all right. So that game was tough, but yeah, Ian didn't win all the games. I think he won 2 out of the 3 though.
Gotcha.
But that Alenda game was just brutal. He should not have won that. But yeah, that was kind of my magic. I've been tinkering with some of my cards, making some like notable upgrades in some of the decks, finding places to make some good swap outs. But yeah, all good things on the horizon. I think we're gonna play maybe some games this weekend, maybe some games coming up next Monday.
Nice.
So I'll have some more Commander 9 League coming at you for next week. But yeah, that's
Looking
pretty much
forward
all
to
I
it.
got. Let me do my flavor of the week really quick because it's all really boring stuff.
Oh, mine's pretty quick too.
Cool. My visual medium was Drive to Survive. I only watched like the first 3 episodes, but we talked about that in depth. So just know that I'm tuned in. I'm taking a gander, and anybody watching the show, watch the show Drive to Survive, so you can get up on all the F1 goodness.
Justin's just not a maniac like myself who had to binge it in like
No.
3 days and force his girlfriend to watch multiple episodes with him.
My binging days are over.
However, I do have to say, this is a side note, but Colleen also loves Danny Ricardo just like Sarah, so I just had to. The man's hot. What can we say?
he is good looking. I have a feeling it's got to do with the accent. It's the total package. He's got it all. But yeah, so Drive to Survive. You can see Ricardo's very handsome mug there. My food is a dessert. Have you, sir, ever had chocolate covered frozen raspberries?
I've not. That sounds like I don't
Check
know if
it.
I'd like it though. I'm not a big like fruit in my dessert kind of person.
Oh, okay.
Like there are very few like things that I'm big about. Like I'll do like some strawberries and stuff on like a angel food cake and whatnot, but
Right.
I don't really like smoothies that have like
Hmm.
I don't like chunks of fruit. I don't like fruit ice cream typically. So I'm a little weird about that. But chocolate covered things, I like, whether it's like chocolate peanuts, like I enjoy them. They're not my like
Sure.
tippy top favorite, but that sounds like it actually would be pretty good.
I mean, they're nice and crunchy, man. They're very tasty. So it's a nice little snack.
Nice.
Chocolate covered frozen raspberries, and then for music,
Were
I
they
was listening.
homemade? Sorry.
Fuck no, fuck no.
Ah,
They're
okay.
bought at the store.
Okay.
I'm sure they would probably be pretty relatively easy to do homemade. You'd have to do it in multiple layers, though.
It
It's
just
easy to
wouldn't
just
have
buy them.
shocked me if you guys had done some homemade. You like to do little like things homemade and like make some different foods, so wouldn't have caught me off guard.
Maybe the next time I bring it up, it'll be because we did make them homemade. That's an interesting idea. I was listening to Drogas Wave on Monday when we were playing Commander. It brought a little bit of a different musical vibe to the games. And yeah, that's a great album to go back to. Pretty good concept album. Lupe, always good.
Very
But yeah,
cool.
I'm talking. Give me your flavor of the week.
So my food for my flavor of the week was what Colleen and I had for our dinner before our movie. So we had poke bowls, and so it's been a minute since I've had a poke bowl, which is essentially a bowl of sushi like Chipotle, but just sushi, and it was just delicious. Really enjoyed it a lot. For my music, it's actually less about the stuff that I listen to as opposed to stuff that I'm like putting on my list. So I
Nice.
was going back through and I had a little sticky note that had been sitting on my desk for about forever. And over the weekend, I went through, and the sticky note basically had. I was trying to, at one point, consolidate all of my music that I had liked and saved and all into different genre playlists so that I had those together, and so I wasn't skipping from the band to Billy Joel to Kendrick to whatever as I'm shuffling. But putting those artists that I had on my sticky note that I wanted to like have some of their music and filter it out, but I just wanted to make sure I had those artists like on my list. I put those artists in a album on Spotify as like a go back spot, so I can more easily go back and just like click the artist and like put the music, sort it and all.
Nice.
But also I went through my notes from the pod and different artists that we've talked about that you've mentioned to me. And so putting a bunch of those albums into a playlist of just like albums that I want to listen to in their entirety.
Mm-hmm.
Like Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars, Highway 61, Ready to Die, Deltron 3030, just going through a lot of those ones that I have kind of collected as recommendations and all, and putting them into
Mm-hmm.
one spot so that I can go back to them as well, and I have them there on my phone to listen to when I have that opportunity for a nice little long listen. So
Yeah,
that
that's
was
dope. Nice.
that and kind of consolidation of my music, similar to your consolidation that you've been working on, was my music highlight for this week.
Very
Um,
cool.
and then my visual medium was seeing the Batman.
Mm-hmm.
Just without spoilers, initial thoughts. I thought that Robert Pattinson was a pretty good Batman. He was a little too emo for me as Bruce Wayne, but I didn't think he did a bad job of it. I think that Christian Bale, and I was actually thinking about it today while I was like putting together my thoughts, and I looked up like the time difference in between the different Batman movies because I was like, I think that maybe the reason that I'm like biased almost against Robert Pattinson's version of Bruce Wayne, even though like I thought his acting was really well done. It's just like the style was a little different. But I was like, maybe it's just because I was so accustomed to the Christian Bale Batman. But then I looked back and it was like 12 years or so, I guess, or 10 years or so between the end of the Christian Bale Batman series and like this first movie, which was also similar to the previous Batman series. Those were like, I think the last one was in 97 before Batman Begins was in 05. So I think it was just a this is just my age and what I was accustomed to, that maybe the difference between their styles and all like was not kind of what I was used to. Not like I went in with no expectations. I had avoided all spoilers and I just wanted to see how it was. But that was the vibe I got. So I was like trying to figure out if it was because like it actually was that, or maybe if it was just me being too like biased, or just my knowledge being primarily, or like movie history for Batman being primarily the Dark Knight series, and all. So it was kind of interesting to see the differences. I enjoyed the movie a lot. It had a pretty good, I think, following of standard Batman lore and all. It didn't really deviate from those things, but it also like brought in some different like aspects and parts that you haven't seen as much in other Batman movies. So
Nice.
the Batman, I would definitely recommend checking it out. Me being a big Batman nerd, I'm sure I enjoyed it more than the average viewer, but I do think that it was a pretty solid movie, so I would recommend it.
Nice.
But that is my flavor of the week. And so with that, we are at the end of this week's episode. So of course, as always, everyone, thank you for listening. And of course, you can find us on Spotify, Google Podcasts, check us out on YouTube, hit us up on Twitter at Tall and Short of One. We got a couple of comments this past week, I believe, going in on me about how I've never had Korean food, which is what I said when I've been to K-Pot. However, I think that my interpretation was like a standard full Korean meal as opposed to just like...
Our listeners are always right, though, Aaron. You can't beat them.
They are, and I'm sure I'll get some backlash on this one. But we do appreciate you guys getting involved in the comments there and ragging on me a little bit. I appreciate it very much. But we're looking forward to this F1 season, bringing you all more content. But that's all I've got for today.
Nice. Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you so much for listening. Thank you very much for tuning in and spending your time with us. To the listeners that are getting after it and like Aaron said, poking a little fun, we really appreciate you. You know, keep on reaching out, keep on making us laugh. But yeah, this has been another episode of the Tall and Short of It podcast. Peace out, everyone.
Later.